We are live. Welcome to another episode of the Reintroduction Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Estefanos, and I'm here with my co-host, Mina Sawiris. And today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a heavy hitter episode. We have an episode in which we have we always say very special guests, but these two
can't say
are,
special guests anymore.
I mean, we can't say
We gotta
special
find
guests.
something else.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out some alternative sort of
We have
language
too many
to use.
special guests.
But I will say, how about truly inspiring guests? People that have moved me in many ways, have been real role models for me in my life. We have Father Abraham and Dalia Fam, and I will let Mina introduce you to these two wonderful people. They don't really need an introduction because so many people know them from the amazing work that they've done all over the world. And Abraham and Dalia, thank you so much for being with us this evening. We're super happy to have the both of you on.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Mina, for having us.
I'll tell you a funny story about Father Abraham and I when we first met, because I met him when I was looking to apply to dental schools. And I was looking to go to DC or stay in Jersey or many different places. And then I met him at the monastery in California back then. I don't know if you remember this story. And he talked me into moving to DC because the church is awesome and there were so many services and Mission Life Center. And it's like, you got to come check it out. You got to come.
Yeah.
And then it was one of the reasons why I considered coming to DC over any other place. And then I moved and then I tried to call you and it kept going to voicemail. And then when I moved, I was like, guys, I'm trying to call your former name was Michael Fam. It's like, I'm trying to call Michael Fam and I can't get in touch with him. Like, oh yeah, he moved to Africa and he became a priest.
I knew you were coming, Mina, so I had to go, man.
It's like this guy talked me into coming and he left. But honestly, we're so inspired by your life, you and Dahlia, and what you guys have done. And the reason why we're gonna say we have two really amazing guests today is because it's very also relevant to the topic that we're talking about. Today, we're talking about affluence and poverty. And Father Abraham and Dalia are currently serving at St. Athanasius, St. Timothy and St. Athanasius Church in Washington, D.C. But they have lived a life of mission for a long time. They served in Zambia for 13 years. And before that, mission was nothing strange to them. You can confidently say that they have known what it's like to live poor. They've known what it's like to live among the poor. So we're very excited to have you guys here to talk about that. So Chris, tell us a little bit about why we are talking about poverty today and how does it relate to the rest of the season?
You know, this whole season we've been discussing, Mina, the topic of what it means to be human. And we've had a number of really challenging conversations. We've discussed the topic of vocation, identity, human dignity, what it means to have single relationships, marital relationships. We've just really discussed this dialogue that people have with one another and kind of the misconceptions that people have about one another and what it means to be human. So this topic kind of fits right in because one of the things that all of us have that are privileged in the West is wealth. Then this idea that what do we do with our wealth? How are we supposed to be faithful stewards with this wealth when we look around us and we see so much need and so much poverty and so much hurt? So this topic we felt was really a necessary one. And I know it sometimes feels like our topics are a little bit sort of tangential, but this one we felt was really important after the subject of war and after the subject of the distorted relationships, because one of the things that we've distorted as humans is how we use the gifts that God has given us. So oftentimes we use the gifts that God has given us for our own self and for our own sort of ascent in human society. I'm excited today because I hope that we can have a really healthy conversation around what do we do with our resources? How do we bless those around us who are less fortunate? How do we also apply what the Bible says about affluence? And how do we reconcile it kind of with some of the things that we see on a daily basis in our own lives that almost seem a little bit contradictory? So, Abun and Dalia. First thing that we want to dive right into is we want to just talk a little bit about this idea of when we read scripture. And we see kind of the different stories of, for example, the young rich ruler, where in the young rich ruler, this young man with a lot of money comes to Christ and says, Lord, I have followed all the commandments from my youth. I've done all these great things. And Christ challenges him and says, go sell all that you have and come follow me. Go sell all that you have, give to the poor, and come follow me. And the young man left sorrowfully because he was rich and had great possessions, and he didn't follow Christ. And that topic, or that passage always rings in my ears very loudly, because how do I apply it? I don't have that same command, or do I? So how do we reconcile those types of scripture with our own lives today?
Yeah, I think that scripture definitely hits home for a lot of us, and you wonder if that is exactly the same thing for me. It could be. I think the main thing here is it's clear that God didn't want anything to be a higher priority than him. And I think that's like, if we make anything a higher priority or more important, and sometimes we do when it comes to money, that was higher for the rich young ruler. That was more important. That was what he was holding on to more than probably God, right? He wanted God, but there was still something higher. And I think that's you're right, Chris. We have to examine ourselves here. Is there something that's higher than God in my life? And most times it could be for us wealth, luxury, possessions, comforts, money at the center of that. And it's hard to be honest, Chris and Mina. It's hard to be honest with ourselves that those things could take a priority over God. But God knew exactly what he was lacking, and he went after it and said, I don't want anything to be higher than me. And so he pointed at something that we don't want to point at, and I think that by bringing it up today, we just have to examine ourselves. And it's something we need to think about is my wealth, is my riches, is my comforts, is my possessions more important and higher than him? Of course, everyone would say quickly, there's no way. But if we examine deeper, and that's what God did, that's what Christ did. He went deep into this person's life. And I think that's a good starting point for all of us who are us four plus whoever's listening, that is there something that is taking higher precedent than God in my life? And is money part of that? Is my wealth part of that? So definitely it's a message for us individually just to examine. And when Christ gives any message in the Bible to someone, it's to us first and foremost. So we just have to see how we can apply it.
Yeah, and as this applies to us, and as we talk about it, because obviously at church we preach repentance, and we talk about gluttony, we talk about greed, we talk about the love of money, we talk about a lot of sinful behavior. But when it comes to the love of money in particular, I feel like for me, I'll say this personally, I wouldn't think of it much about myself. I think, this applies to the rich people, the really rich people, right? And by every standard, by every worldly standard, I am filthy rich. Because if you even just have the power of choice of thinking, what should I do? What can I do with my money? You're already in the top 10% of the world, of the richest people in the world. So Dahlia, what do you think comparative to like the life that you guys have lived and what it was like in Africa? How do we, when we hear commandments like the love of money and we think, look, no, this doesn't apply to us because there's a lot more richer people than us who this should apply to. How do you think it actually translates when in comparison to life over there as opposed to here? What does richness look like over there? Because we know what it looks like here, but what does it look like there?
Mina, it's funny that you said that, because I think it is just a mentality and a way to live, whether I'm putting something above giving or above God. Like I've even seen, like I'm just thinking back to the 14 years we were in Zambia, and like there are times when I've seen just little kids literally who never get chocolate, and then they just like lick a piece of chocolate and share that chocolate with the next kid, and then share that, you know what I mean? Before pre-COVID, they were always doing that, and things like that. And so it's just, I think it is just a way of life and a way of living where I'm just giving, I remember seeing just a very elderly widow, and he's just eating a piece of bread, but there's another more poor widow beside him, and he just breaks the piece of bread and gives it to her. So it's really just, I think it's got to be a simplicity of just like obeying what God is telling us, and he's saying, give, and there is someone who's always going to have less than me, but whatever, even if you are that poor college student or poor, in any way, it's just a life of giving. It's a mentality to have, if that makes sense.
I just want to add something to what Dahlia's saying. She made me think now that what is richness? I think that's kind of what you're trying to go to. Like, what is richness? Richness is like being rich is being thankful for whatever God does give you, and praise God for whatever God gives you. And that's what we've seen in our time in Africa, is that people have so little, but they're thankful for that. And not only just thankful, but then you see this great praise from their heart to God for everything they'd have. And this contentment and this way, like you can have a lot and not be content and be so poor. So this is, we know it's biblical, but seeing it with your own eyes, like we're going from two extremes. Zambia, people don't have as much, but thankful and praising and content. Here, everything's at our fingertips, and things that we don't think are, like having a car, that's a luxury. Having a home, that's a luxury. So these things are luxuries. Like that would be something luxurious over there. But just this spirit of simplicity and contentment and thankfulness and praise is the true richness and wealth that I think that some of us need to pray for our own life here as we get caught up,
Father Abraham and Dalia, I'll never forget my first trip to Africa. And I will never forget the poverty that I felt I lived in.
That's it.
I remember going there and so excited. We're here, we're doing mission, we're going to serve people, we're going to do medical campaigns, we're going to do all this cool stuff. And I vividly remember my first visit, my first house visitation. They brought out all the food from the village.
Yeah.
And they served it to those who were coming to be with them and to, spend time with them. And I remember asking one of the elders of the area, I said, "Why are you serving us all this food?" And he said, "Because we believe that you are blessings to us and we need to bless you and give you of what we have." I said, "But this is your food for the next few days and you're offering it to us." And he said, "It's not ours to begin with. It's God's." And I think that mentality radically shifted, how I view just everything that I have. Nothing is really ours. Nothing that we have is our own. It's all been given for us to do something with. So I guess the question is, for those who maybe are listening on this podcast that are hearing these really amazing stories of the richness in Africa and in other countries that are impoverished, how do we use our wealth in a healthy way?
Yeah, it's a great question.
And off that, before Abuna, you start
Sure.
answering that question, because I read an article last week about a reality star who is selling, and excuse me for this, who is selling her farts in mason jars, and she made $200,000 doing that.
Are you
What's going on?
Yeah, but this is not the story, actually. The story is that she got hospitalized because she could not keep up with the demand. It made me think, this story made me think about disposable income, right? And how sometimes we have money that we don't know what to do with, that we indulge in things that might seem crazy to anyone who's listening or watching or reading about it. And it brings me to that point, the question that Chris just asked, if the commandment to the young rich ruler is not a general commandment, not everyone is supposed to go sell everything they have and give to the poor and go live a monastic life, maybe, or anything like that, like Saint Anthony. For sure, it is like that for some people, but not for everyone. But for the rest of us who don't feel like this is the commandment for them, and we do have a decent job, disposable income, what are we supposed to do with the money that we have in order to be faithful and in order to still help out when needed?
Yeah. I mean, I always go back to a verse that I really like, that St. Paul said to Second Corinthians, in Second Corinthians, I think it's chapter 8. He's talking about our abundance that we have is supposed to provide the lack that others have. And then their abundance is supposed to provide for my lack. So I think that it just opens up my eyes to think about what is my responsibility. Is that if I have an abundance in any area, now it could be financial, like you said, it could be in just having a heart to serve, or whatever my abundance is, whatever God has given me, it's there not for me, but it's there to where other people are lacking, right? And like Chris said a second ago, is that when we go to Africa, their abundance is their hospitality, their humility, their simplicity, their praise in tribulation. They're abundant in that, and that's what you received, Chris, and I have received, and Dalia, and all of us who've been there for many years, is that they had an abundance in an area, and they really gave it to us, and we really enjoyed that, and we really benefited. Honestly, like, I can't sit here and tell you how much my life has been changed so much just by living among the beautiful people in Africa. Just by being next to them, I felt like I was. So their abundance really helped me. Now, I don't feel like it was a fair exchange, because my abundance and our abundance in the first world, we're not doing the same back. Like that doesn't make any sense. We go there and we're supposed to give and we take. And then, and we have not, because you said earlier, we have not because we're any better than anyone, or it's just God gave us a great responsibility, the stewardship. He gave every one of us a responsibility, stewardship, to use our abundance where someone else is lacking. And I think that I just want to make sure I don't forget that. And I think that by you guys having us on this podcast, you're really making me and Dahlia really think about what they gave us, the beautiful people of Zambia. And now it's our turn. If you love God, it's natural that you're going to love these people. And you want to give whatever you can to them, especially the mistreated, those in poverty, those in need. Like, it's just clear, like it's in each one of us. It's like the Holy Spirit tugs every time we think about this topic. No, I am responsible, because whatever abundance I do have, I need to give what someone's lacking. When we say abundance, like you said a minute ago, Mina, like we think, no, I'm not a millionaire, so I don't have abundance. No. If you have these simple things in life that no one else has, you have an abundance, even, and I think that we have to think about what's our responsibility. What's my stewardship? How can I be, because I love God, I'm responsible to make sure I use whatever I do have for him and for his people. And we receive so much for those who don't have wealth abundance, financial abundance, and it's our turn to repay them, or to offer back to them. So just a few thoughts about that.
I think you reminded me of a quote. I think it was St. John Chrysostom that says, the rich exist for the sake of the poor, and the poor exist for the salvation of the rich.
There you go. Perfect.
Because, I mean, I think that echoes exactly what you just said,
Yeah.
It's this exchange of really life into one another, right? When I experience that hospitality and that love, it breathed life in me. And I'm sure when we bring things for folks that are in Africa, donations, etc., it really breathes life, whether it be medicine, whether it be different things. It's a life-giving means. And I think that exchange is so necessary. And I do, it reminds me of one of the earlier episodes we had this season, where we were talking about when we see all violence in the world and war, how we just have these like temporary moments of like emotional bursts, and we get online and we type. So Dahlia, like, how do you think our response to this stuff should be? Like, when we hear about impoverished countries and we think about the wealth that we have, how do we respond? Like, what do we do?
Well, I was thinking about it because we're talking about Africa a lot. I was thinking about, the last, years, so many people have come and visited and have gone back, and a lot from the West. And there's always like, it's just, why is it that when they're in Africa, like, missionaries from the West, and they're just on fire, they're drawn close to Christ, they're giving, they're helping, they're serving, they're alive, right? They're like truly, they feel the presence of God. And then when they come back home, they lose it, like, so to say, you know what I mean? Like, why? Is God only in Africa? Or is the poor only in Africa? And I would say, like, and I think this is where there's a disconnect happening, is that I feel like really it's because, there's a few distractions, and but there's, the main thing is that we stop kind of giving and seeking those that are in need and are impoverished right in our own communities, our neighborhoods, our, people we work with. There's a lot of, levels of poverty, right? And I think that's kind of that struggle, is that we don't need to go to Africa to feel this, like, that I'm giving and I'm receiving, and that there's this exchange and this closeness with Christ, but it's kind of that it's all around me. And to just find those examples, or just find that need,
Yeah. I think that it's so easy to get caught up, Chris and Mina, and we've been caught up, and we confess this on this podcast, that we've been caught up.
Yeah, I'm speaking from experience for sure. We've been back for a year. Sorry. No, right. We've been back for a year, and it was like getting settled, finding a job. Oh, retirement. I never thought about that before. Like, we have to start thinking about all these things, and it's not bad. My kids need to go to school. We need a roof over our heads. We can't keep living off his mom, like, there's like a lot of.
We'll try.
Thanks, Tant. You've been great. But like, these are natural things and their needs, I would say. But at the same time, this is why we really felt this was truly from God when you asked us to come, because like, we naturally got distracted, and we no longer started, like, it was so easy in Africa, right outside my door. There's people in need, and you could see it. You can experience touching Christ right then and there, right outside my door. Here, yes, it's a little bit harder. You get distracted. There's a lot of things going on, but I think if we're just more intentional about, living this way, teaching it to our children, seeing this need in our communities, around us, globally, around us, everywhere. It's just, I don't know if that makes sense. But,
just to kind of hit it right at the point, because I feel like Dahlia just hit it, is that being intentional means it's part of my conversation in my home. Being intentional to help those around me that are mistreated and need and poverty, and it could be physical, spiritual poverty. It could be like, if we love God, we love his children. It's natural. That's it. We love God, we love his children, and we look outside of ourselves, and we say, and I love the word be intentional, because if it's not part of your daily conversation, if it's not part of your daily plan, then it's never going to happen. It only happens if you see a homeless guy when you're driving your car and at the stoplight and he's got a sign, then you're going to have the debate for 2 seconds to give or not give. But as far as like coming back here, it's easy to get caught up unless each of us have conversation in our home, makes it part of our way of life, makes it part of the discussion, part of our service to God, our love for God. It's got to be part of, just like we talk about bills and we talk about different things in our home, that's got to be one of the conversations. And I think that if anyone's listening, I would say, like, make it a point after this podcast to sit down with your family or sit down with yourself and say, what are some intentional things I can do to look outside myself to God's children who are in need? Okay, God has done so much for me, for us. I need to make it not an emotional, one of you said earlier, an emotional decision when something arises, but it's part of my way of life. I'm going to find out what's the need of my community. I live in Leesburg. I'm going to find out what's the need in Leesburg. And actually, our SDSA church, in Leesburg, we found out, hey, what's the need in Leesburg? We found out the homeless, the sick, those who are in need, and we started serving whoever was. So it was something that we couldn't just sit by and watch people every day in front of us without helping. So being intentional as a church, being intentional as a family, I love that what Dahlia said, because without it, it's just, you'll find that the year will go by, 2022 will be finished, and we really didn't participate in something so important.
Father Abraham and Dahlia, you in the last few points you're making, you're talking more about how to be good stewards of what we are given, and how can we be proactive about serving in immediate needs that our community has. And it doesn't seem like there is a one answer fits all, because a lot of people will come and say, I feel guilty about moving to a bigger house or buying a nicer car. Where do I draw the line? Like, I can say, and I think most of us would agree, maybe some of our friends listening might not agree, that owning 200 pairs of shoes might be excessive, right? You never know.
I mean, I came with like 2 pairs. I had to start building them up, right?
Dahlia, it's okay. It's okay. You can have a few extra pairs. It's fine. You've been living in Mission for 13 years. Come on, Abuna, give her some slack.
Exactly. But the question becomes then, what is not excessive? Where is the line drawn? Like, someone might say 5 pairs is too little. Someone might say 200 is too much. The line to be drawn between what is enough and what is not enough, it seems like it is a personal decision. It is not like a sermon given at church where you hear a priest saying you should not own more than 30 pairs of shoes, right?
I might give that
sermon. It seems that what you're saying is a lot of this is personal. A lot of it is between us and God. A lot of it is not driven by guilt. A lot of it is not driven by wants, pleasures, and desires. Like, so what triggers it? Like, me, when I'm making that decision for myself, what factors am I considering, so that I am honest in giving and helping with the resources that God has given me in order to help, without feeling that guilty I'm not helping?
Yeah. I mean, these are actually challenging questions for all of us, right? I mean, like, what is too much?
Yeah.
You know? And I would say, first and foremost, I feel like God has given us a chance to be faithful to take care of ourselves and a family eventually. And I think that if you have a family, it's not like you bypass them, but part of your service or part of your love for God is to be faithful for, you know, what God has given you, and you take care of your family, because sometimes people misunderstand this, and they take the opposite extreme of like being over frugal and like not taking care of the basic needs for their family. So no, I'm not. I think that the first thing is, guilt should never drive anything, because guilt is not from God. I mean, we know that clearly. Like, anything I do is because I love God. I'll take care of my family. If I need to provide a house, schooling or a car or whatever I need to provide for them, I need to do that faithfully. And that's okay. That's not against God, or it's not against Christ or anything like that. But here's where it gets a little bit sticky, is when I'm only doing that and I'm only thinking of myself, and my eyes are never outside of what we want or what we need. Even, by the way, it's good to plan for your future and the future for your kids' college, and all these things that we plan for. That's fine. Those are good. But if that's only it, Mina, then I think that we lost looking outside of ourselves, because Christ never taught us to only look about ourselves. And I think that's kind of the thing. Like, if I go to a bigger house, but I never cared for anybody outside of my family and their needs, I think that's a little bit tricky. But if I'm going to another house for whatever reason that you want to go to another house, and I'm really faithful and honoring God by taking care of his children who are in need, I think that's a good balance. What it gets tricky is that this is my only life. I need a bigger house, bigger car, because everybody else did it. All these things are, like, I'm not saying they're bad. I don't want anyone to misunderstand. But if that's what's leading my life, if that's what's controlling my life, and if you have 15 pairs of shoes and you want 17 pairs of shoes, so like maybe 15 is enough. But maybe some other people who don't even have shoes, maybe it's a good opportunity for us to think about them. So never feel guilty for what never feel guilty for what you're doing faithfully for you and your family. But surely when you look at the eyes of the Lord, and surely when our relationship is with God, his children are in need everywhere. And it could be spiritual poverty, it could be physical poverty, it could be, and it's not out of guilt, it's out of love. I think that's what I want to say, Mina. It's out of love. I love God, and I want to, by loving God, I want to take care of my family. Do it faithfully. Don't be too cheap, and don't overdo it, but just be it faithfully, right? And I think both are wrong, but I think let's not get into that topic right now, but be faithful in that. But at the same time, I love God also. And I see that there is a need around the world. I see how many countries and how many people are suffering, and we lived in it for 13, 14 years. We've seen it firsthand. We see it in front of us in our backyard here. We see it. We got to do something. We got to be intentional. We got to do something, not out of guilt, but out of love. I love God. I got to help somebody, right? By the way, it's a natural thing. You don't have to think of it. It just comes like, I really want to do something for somebody else. This comes from like the source of God's presence in our life. It naturally comes out by, I want to help anybody around me. And it could be someone in physical poverty, or someone who's lonely, someone who's depressed, someone who is broken from some situation. God just used me for anything to help anyone. I think that's where we need to focus on.
You struck something in me in what you said, Father Abraham, because I remember last year I was like, I wanted to buy a larger house. And I was like really struggling, because if anyone is in the market right now for a home in the Washington, D.C. area, it's insane. I mean, the prices are crazy. And I was feeling this sense of guilt, because I'm like, I don't really need it. Like, I don't need a bigger house. But I was like, yeah, but it'd be good for the schools. And I'm like thinking. And then I remember one of my spiritual mentors said to me, he said, dude, it doesn't matter about the size of the house or how expensive the house is. It matters what you do with it. Are you opening your home to others? Are you bringing people in? Are you gathering? Are you opening it to your community? Is it something that is blessing others? And I think that really shifted again, sometimes you get these moments where it shifts your perspective on things. And yeah, guilt is not from God. And I think a lot of times we have this sense in the West of, I feel guilty for what I have. But I don't think that's a healthy approach, like you said, Father Abraham. I think the approach is, what can I do with what I have, and how can I bless others, versus making it self-focused.
Yeah.
Dahlia, what do you think?
It reminds me of a story. When we were in Zambia, we had a simple little flat, I guess what it's called, apartment. But anyways, it was just super simple. And when we got there was, in the kitchen, there was literally just like a folding table, right? Like, that's all I ever worked on. It was all I ever cooked on. And then a stove and a fridge and a sink. And so everything, and there was pretty much nothing else. And I was like that for 10 years. And honestly, and during those 10 years, when I didn't do anything, just cooking everything on this little folding table. And people who've been to Zambia know, like, we had an open home. We cooked for people. People came over. We baked together. We cooked together. It was always like kind of like that community and hospitality, and just like that open. And then at one point I was like, I've had this kitchen long enough. I think it's time to like make a real kitchen. I'm talking about like the countertops and, proper places where I don't just put my pots on top of the floor. You know what I mean? Like actual like cabinets, and, just make the kitchen nicer. And I was like, so that I could serve people better, right? And of course we did it. We did a renovation of the kitchen, and this is in Zambia, so it was a simple renovation, but still. And then after that, I think I want to say like a year later, we looked around and we were like, no one had been in our home since we had renovated it. So wow. It's funny, I hadn't used it like for what I said I was going to do. So honestly, God gives you whatever little resources you have, and you can. It's just, honestly, it's like you said, it's about the heart, the mindset, and what you're going to do with it, how to bless those that are truly in need, spiritually, physically.
So wealth is not bad. Having money is not a source of guilt, should not be a source of guilt. What you're saying is that we should focus, like serving the poor and thinking of ways to provide for those who might not have as much as we do, should always be on our mind. That is one of the most important criteria. To love God, serve his children, and not feel bad for what you have. And as long as you're having all these components together, then you are going about it almost the right way. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think if you think about it, even some people in the world who are the wealthiest are still the biggest givers, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's like you said, like it's not okay. Like it's how much, whatever you do have, like Dahlia was saying earlier, whatever we do have, and you can call it wealthy or not wealthy, whatever we do have, as long as we share. We tell our kids sharing is caring, but we never practice it ourselves. Like sharing, giving. And also another point is our wealth, and this is hard to be honest, is our wealth leading our life? Like what's driving your life? This past year, my father he passed away, and during the funeral time, people were at house giving condolences, and we struck up a conversation about retirement. And I was like, everyone was talking about retirement. I'm like, man, I'm way behind all this talk. It's just like they're talking about retirement and then retire in 15 years and all this money and whatever like that. So I started getting pumped up. I was like, yeah, tell me more about retirement. Give me this whole thing. And then someone recommended a book about heaven because my dad passed away, so I wanted to get inspired. So the first section of the book said, we're too busy worried about retirement and not about eternity. We're too busy focused on, okay, we're going to retire one day, and that retirement's going to be about 20 years. You're going to enjoy everything we're doing with our money and our wealth. It's just for those 20 years and everything we're doing. But our eternity, how much time do we really spend on that? Focusing on that. And part of our eternity is the way we live our life, the way we like our stewards and responsible for our wealth, what God gives us, what he gives us, retirement, and we're going to have this, and I don't have to work again. So the first section, I was like, oh man, this is a message slapped me right in the face. I'm sitting there getting pumped up about retirement, getting into this whole thing of retirement. God says, we focus just for that, all our life. Imagine, just think about what I'm saying. All our energy is just for the 20 years that we're going to have. We're going to be old and barely able to move. And for those 20 years of retirement. What about our eternity? Eternity is something that we should consider. And this conversation we're having now is keeping our eyes on God and eternity and what he loves. Not what I love only, but what he loves and what he wants me to do with my life. And I think that's what our perspective should change on. It's not only my life. God gives me my life and my life and my wealth for eternity, for my eternity and for my family's eternity. And for those out there that don't even know him, that's on the street, and those who are in physical poverty and spiritual poverty, that's my eternity is also there too. So that was a kind of a wake up call for me.
Man, I was talking to a patient of mine recently, and he was telling me about this idea of the hedonic treadmill, which is like you are constantly wanting something more and more and more and more and more and more and more, and it never is enough. You're always kind of grasping for the next thing. And if you think about it, right, you get a car, after a little bit it loses its luster. You buy a home, after a little bit it loses its luster. But I think what you just said, Father Abraham, really resonates, because when we focus on what is earthly, it has no taste. But when you focus on what's eternal, it always produces a sense of joy and a sense of blessing so many people around you that it's priceless. Like my greatest moments of joy in my life, and I know for both of you, your greatest moments of joy has been blessing other people. And it's no shock that they have these like Harvard studies of like studying happiness. Like, how do people get happy? I didn't even know that happiness was like actually like a field that people do PhDs in. And they say that the 3 things that make people happy is, number 1, deep and meaningful relationships. So like being connected in community. Number 2, acts of service, blessing others. And number 3, practicing gratitude. 3 things that the church has been teaching for over 2,000 years, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't take a PhD to figure out that happiness is found in those 3 things that are rooted in Christianity and rooted in what Jesus himself did, right? Blessed others, related to others, and was in deep, intimate relationship with other people, and taught us how to be grateful, taught us how to be thankful for all the things that we have. So, man, I think I don't know. Went on a little bit of a tangent here, but
It's good. Good stuff, man.
I think it's an important reminder for me personally. Like what you said earlier resonates so much because anything that you do with love really transforms the world around you. Like if our motive is in love, not in guilt, not in anything else, it doesn't matter how much money we have. It doesn't matter like it just matters that our lens is a lens that's eternal. Our lens is a lens that is Christ-like. And I'm sorry I'm talking too much, Mina. So please
That's
jump
good.
in and take me off this tangent. But
No.
for our listeners, this is what Abun Abraham and Dahlia said is really poignant for every single one of us to be listening to. Because man, if we just had a lens that was less on the last 20 years of our life and a lens that was more focused on eternity, man, the world would look very different.
Yeah. And I think, just one thing I'm thinking about just when you're talking is that how do I'm going to ask the question, see if anybody can answer, all of us can. How do we not get caught up in something Di said earlier? How do we not get caught up? Because we're going to finish this podcast. And then we're going to go back into our daily routine. And if you got kids, you know how hard it is to get the kids to bed. If they're studying and we got these things and we got their activities and then we got all our stuff in churches included in our daily, it's all there. But then we lose again focus on this great thing that I lose focus on eternity and what I need to do for others and this service of those around me in need. And this, we just finished Martin Luther King Jr. and what he did. And you get inspired by how he helped so many people. And then you say, okay, I want to do something. And then it gets emotional for a few minutes and we get these podcasts, we get emotional. But maybe the question is for all of us is like, how can we make this a way of life? How can we make this, keep this intentional for everybody on like who's listening, including ourselves? How can we make it, sorry, I'm turning the podcast back on everybody else, but how do we make this, I don't want this to be something short-lived. I don't want to take this podcast and this time with you guys and just, and not take it into my daily life. And I think that there's got to be something we do, again, in our families, in our conversations, at church, to make this more of a way of life as part of our spirituality. This is part of our spiritual life. This is part of our spiritual growth. This is prayer and fasting and giving.
Spiritual practice.
Right?
Yeah.
Great Lent will come up and we're going to talk about prayer, fasting, and giving. So this is our spiritual life. So how can we keep this thing going? And I'm just going to throw that out there because I need some help too on this.
Father Abraham, as you're talking, and I'm thinking about this, the question you're posing, and I'm thinking about the end of the year, right? The end of the fiscal year. 2021 has ended and then we're starting 2022, and a lot of people make like a lump sum donation at the end of the year for like tax purposes and to start off the new year. I think the first thing that always comes to mind as we talk about this is I should give more money, and that might not always be the answer, just to give more money where is needed. There's a lot. And I was thinking as I was reflecting on this topic today before we got on the podcast, and I was thinking about the verse where Christ says, and I was hungry and you fed me, and I was naked and you clothed me, and I was imprisoned and you visited me. And I think to myself, and I think out loud and I say, I've been in a church for however many years, and I've been served by so many people, and I've served others, and I've given talks and all that stuff. But how many times did I really fulfill the most basic commandment of feeding the hungry and visiting the imprisoned? And he doesn't say, and I was hungry and he gave me money so I can buy food. And I was thirsty and he gave me money so I can buy drinks. And I was imprisoned, so you paid someone to come visit me. Like he talks about actual tangible things that are being done. Not just putting money out there. And I'm asking myself the question, because like I have no purpose being on this podcast tonight, having this conversation, telling anyone else what to do. And I was asking myself, Mina, like, why are you not helping? Like, is it because, are you afraid that you're going to have less for yourself? Are you afraid that one day you're going to retire and you're not going to have enough money to live off of? Is it because it's not even on your mind? Like why am I not living the commandment out and sharing from the blessings that God has given me? We talk a lot about having passive income, right? Make your money work for you. That's like the motto of the millennials. That's what we talk about every day at work with everyone. And again, I'll ask myself, why do you want passive income? Why do you want your money to work for you? Is it because you're worried about, like, you want to make sure that you are set and your kids are set for life? What have you considered? I think there was an evangelical preacher, I don't remember his name. He said, make all the money you can so you can give all the money you can. And I was thinking, like, do I do that? No, I think if you follow the commandment and you are honest in working hard, making yourself better at your job, it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it's natural that you're going to be rewarded better and you're going to make more money. So how do I do that? How do I take this commandment, not make it about just giving money and I can just forget about it, and I can go about it every day? I have no idea. I have no idea how to switch that, to go from talking every day about investments and passive income and things like that, and worrying about retirement, like you said, to say, okay, no, I actively need to share from what I have. And what I have is not just money. What I have is a lot more than that. And that I was given a lot more that I need to be sharing from. So to answer your question, I have no answer to your question.
Well, you said something that sparks the thought, is that money is the cheapest thing we can do for somebody else, meaning like it's the easiest thing we can do. And the reason we don't do anything more than that is because it gets messy and uncomfortable and hard. It takes time. It takes part of my life. And I think that it's a sacrifice. So I think that we shy away from those things because it's not part of our daily way of life, our daily routine. And it's a bit uncomfortable. Like if I have to go and sacrifice and spend time, like it's easier just to write that check at the end of the year and say, here. And it's like, okay, I felt good. I'm faithful to help those in need, but it's harder to get yourself, like, here's what I would say. What is more impactful? Giving money for someone to eat food. 2, serving the person food. Or 3, eating a meal with that person that doesn't have. See the difference? It's like, so easy, here's money, go buy some food, eat. Second thing is, I'm going to go and I'm going to be standing there, I'm going to say, here you go, and serve your food. And feel good, I serve your food. I don't think that's there. I think the third one is, this is my brother, this is my sister, I love you, let's sit together, let's talk, let's have a relationship, let's have a friendship. Let's see how because I love God, I want it. Now it gets messy, right? You can't just, so getting messy is actually good. It's like, and I'm saying something that's been a while since I've done this. So, you get messy a lot in Zambia and Africa, and it's good. So am I willing to do that here? Am I willing to build those relationships with people in my community? Am I willing to sit down and eat a meal with that person instead of just serve? At one of our church events recently, I wasn't there, it was a Thanksgiving dinner. I asked, how was the Thanksgiving dinner for those in need? They said it was great. We sat down and ate with them. And I said, that's it. I said, that's what we need to do. We need to eat with them. We need to love them. We need to, if you do it to the least of these, my brethren, you do it unto me, like you said, Mina. And I think that we're too busy trying to think about, we're up here, they're down here, and we need to throw them some stuff down there. We need to come down here and practice these things as, this is my family. This is my brother. This is God's children. I need to sit with them. I need to eat with them. I need to talk to them. I need to understand them. I need to listen to them. I need to love them. I need to serve them. And that's a whole different mentality, but we're not willing to get messy. But I think by listening to you, what you said, I think we should get messy a little bit and get uncomfortable a little bit. And it can be in your community. It can be across the globe, but it's necessary for us to do that. And I think when we wake up every morning, I would say just something small and practical. It's like, God, what is it you want me to do for you today, for your children? Like, is there anybody you want me to meet? Open opportunities for me. God, lead me. Let me do something for you. Let me be a light for you. And it may not happen in that moment. It might happen another day or another day. But like, I think we need to be intentional about praying for ways that we can build relationships with people, God's children, and see how we can use our life, our wealth, our blessing to help others. And at the same time, they're going to do the same back to you. Like we said earlier, they're going to bless us back. So let's be intentional about praying about it, about talking about it, about standing before God, said, how can I even do something for you today? And we'll be willing to get messy.
Amen to that, Dahlia. So this kind of brings this thought that poverty is not really an us versus them situation. It's like, which form of poverty do I have as opposed to my brother, and what do I give him, and what can he give me? So what do you think about that in relation to the poverty that we live here, when we have a lot of money but we don't have the thought and ability and a concern for our brother?
Right. I think the first step is like, I love that we're having this discussion, that we're just getting into that mindset, reminding ourselves that this is a way of life. This is like a spiritual practice. Like, I can't get over feeling that it's like prayer. It's like fasting, giving, serving those that are in need. And, and I think it's just a responsibility. I think and I don't think I don't think everyone just has this idea that, we're just maliciously being selfish or just distracted, And I think, and we're just so caught up in our own world and our own lives and our busyness, that I think it is being intentional, like what everyone's saying, to take the time to see the poverty around me and in others, and being able to serve that need. But I definitely think this is a great first step. This has been a blessing for me, just having this discussion and this mindset that I'm ready now. Tonight, I might keep the kids up past their bedtime, and what else we got to talk about this? We're going to have to do some changes. It's a new year, and it has to be a way of life, and not just a Christmas and Easter type of, let's give in these special events, but it's a daily spiritual practice, just like prayer and fasting, the way I give to others that are in need, and seeking that out every day. And I truly believe that when I do this, and when I live this way, when I live having these eyes of Christ, I truly believe he is like giving me the grace to kind of draw closer to him and be in communion with him and be in union with him. I believe that as we are, giving and drawing into his likeness, I feel that, that it's just changing us, and into more of his image, so we can see others and help others.
I was talking to this priest that I know very well recently, and asked, why are you so ascetic? Like, this priest, like, is just so giving of himself, like, wears the same, like, dirty galabe all the time, and, like, he's just like, he doesn't take care of himself.
What's galabeya, Chris?
Oh, it's like a cassock, the same cassock. And he just is constantly giving of himself. And I asked him, why are you? He's like, man, because I love. I'm not ascetic because I want to give up stuff for the sake of just giving it up. I give up stuff in order to love others more.
Yeah.
And man, that, like, I never had heard that perspective of asceticism. This idea of denying oneself in order to love more. So when I want to buy a really expensive pair of shoes, right? If I have the means to do so and also bless somebody else, maybe take that money that I would spend on a really nice pair of shoes and find 10 people to bless that day. Just like drop blessings. Like I heard one time this pastor say that he would like walk in impoverished neighborhoods and drop like a $50 bill in a random place. And he would like wait from like around the corner to see the person that picks it up. And he'd be like, that was going to be the way that I was going to bless somebody. Again, not money, but like, what can I do to be thinking of how to denying myself a little bit in order to love others more? And that changed the perspective of me, because a lot of times it's asceticism, deny oneself, don't do this, it's bad. It's like, no, it's deny myself to love others more and to give to others more. And it is the mindset, Dahlia. Like, I truly believe that we're so distracted in our current society with so many things that we can't even see the brokenness around us.
Yeah.
We are just, it's just so hard to do so because all I'm focused on is my problems, my issues, my struggles going on. But God really, really, He longs for His people to just say, hey, get out of yourself. Get out of yourself. Look around. And I promise you that when you look around, the problems that you have will disappear. Because that's how God works. Like when you bless others, He is constantly working to not fix your problems, but to change your perspective of your problems, maybe, or to do something different in your problems. So I don't know. I feel like this conversation really convicted me and reminded me of a lot of gems that I've learned from really wise people recently. That I just, there's a lot that needs to change in me. There's a lot that needs to change. I'm guilty. I have a collector's amount of sneakers, like these Jordans that I collect in order to sell one day. And I'm like, yeah, one day I'm going to sell these Jordans for like a few $1,000s, you know? And it's a sickness.
To the poor.
Huh? Yeah, then I can give to the poor. Once I sell my Jordans one day, I'm going to give to the poor and I'm going to, use all that money. But it's craziness.
That's the New York hustler in you, Chris.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. You can take the boy out of New York, but you can't take the New York out of the boy. It's hard. It's hard. But I digress. I mean, you both convicted me very much in what both of you have said.
Thank you, guys. You've encouraged us as well. Like just bringing us on this podcast and giving us a chance to talk about these things. It's we have to look inward. I think if everyone can look inward and without guilt, but looking inward to see what step I can take. What's one small thing I can take away from this podcast that I can take away for me, my family, my life of service. And Dahlia was telling me something earlier that I really liked. She said the early church was practicing after liturgical service that they would collect money for the orphan, the widow, and it would be part of the church life. It was part of the church life. Like it was just like, we know how it was in the book of Acts, and then it carried over to the early church. It's just the way of life is that I'm going to go pray. I'm going to go worship. I'm going to go take Holy Communion. I'm going to go and repent. But I'm also going to go and offer. I'm going to go give. And it was just the way of life of the church. And I just pray that it can be the way of life again for the church and our church in our home and our church in reality. So thank you for bringing us on to give us a little bit of a tug also in this area.
Of course, I have a final thought I want to share. And if you guys want to share final thoughts after that too, we can. As I was preparing for this, someone alluded to a story in Nehemiah that I had never noticed before. In Nehemiah 5, when it talks about as Nehemiah in the Old Testament was charged of rebuilding the wall and being the governor of the people at the time. Some poor people were exploited by the rich of the time. And they came to Nehemiah to complain, to say, hey, we've been exploited, even though our children are just like the same as their children. But we're treated unfairly. They took our land. We don't have much to live off of. In the story, he does three things. It says that like he gets angry. He holds a meeting immediately with the rich people who are guilty of that. And he makes them do three things. He makes them immediately giving the people back what they took, or giving them an ability to fulfill their basic immediate needs at the time. The second thing he does is that he makes them come up with a long-term solution by giving some of the land back or giving them land without interest so that the poor can sustain themselves. Mm-hmm. And the third thing he does is that he brings the priests and he makes the rich people vow in front of the priests and in front of God that they will keep their word, and a promise in front of God that they will actually do these things with the poor. They're not going to let them perish. And then he says in the paragraph after that, he says that from that time forward, him and the people of his house never partook of when he became a governor, he never partook of the governor's lifestyle of like food, because they used to tax people a specific tax just so that they can eat like special food and wine. And he talks about how like from that point, he never bought any property or like did anything like that. And it made me think a lot about an approach. Like he had an approach of using resources to fulfill an immediate need, then using more resources in order to give people an ability to sustain themselves long term, so they're not dependent on you giving. And the third thing, he's making people promise in front of God that they will be good stewards of what God has given them. And the fourth thing that he has done is that he made sure he lived it himself. And reading that story, it made me think of a possible game plan. I have no idea if it's doable. He has done it, but like that, there are some people in my immediate vicinity who need help. Maybe I can help them. Then there are some people that I have other resources that I can help them with long term, maybe with my profession or education or something that is more of a long-term approach. Then I need to make a real promise and dedication in front of God that at least I'm going to give up. I'm going to do what I'm promising to do, and I'm going to give up spending money on like maybe sinful things or stupid things that don't really matter to me. Maybe I'm still going to indulge in a thing or two, but I need to make a promise in front of God. And then the final part, I think, which is the hardest, is actually to live out while you're preaching and to actually do it. So I have no idea, but I think it's been done, and we have many examples in the church and the fathers and who have been able to do that. And I pray for all of us listening that we can kind of take this today, think about it for ourselves, and say, how can I discern for myself what God is asking me to do with the resources that I have? Because we're not going to get a one answer that fits all. Everyone is going to get his answer from God for what to do with their own resources. And I pray that we can all somehow be sincere. And I can be sincere in discerning that for myself, because I have not been.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just to reiterate one thing you said, Mina, is that it's before God that they made this covenant, right? And I think as long as we can do a simple thing is say, God, you gave me everything. I like, let me know how I can use what you gave me for you and for your people. And I think that just having that prayer every morning or every day, you know what's going to happen after some time? Anytime we start asking God for something not ourselves, you can find him opening a lot of doors. I definitely want to take that away. I want to take it that every single day I'm going to stand in my prayer room and say, God, you've given me so much. What is it you want me? First of all, just ask him, what is it you want me to do with that? What do you want me to do with my life? My time, my life, my money, my energy, my focus. What is it you want me to do? I think if everyone can stand before God and do that, and then take the next step, seek out in your community, what's the need? There's a need everywhere. And then making that covenant, like you said, Mina. And I think, you know, what you're saying is that we're keeping God in the forefront. Right now, God gets thrown to the back. Right? I might go to church, read the Bible, and I might just do the church thing, right? But God needs to be in the forefront. Like, God, I love you. What can I do for you? What can I do for your people? And just kind of having God in the forefront every day in our prayer, asking him, open doors, God. And you'll be surprised. You know, we had that prayer 14, 15 years ago, and God sent us to another land. You know, honestly, we had that. It's like, God, like, we're newly married. We're like, God, do whatever you want. Like, you know, we're just like saying these prayers, like, do whatever you want with us. And, you know, we're willing to do whatever you want. We're ready to surrender, like, use our life. We had no idea that after 1 year of marriage, that God would open another world for us. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to go to another world, but God will open some door right in front of you. If you're really willing to be honest in your prayer and genuine in your prayer and just keeping God on the forefront, you never know how he can answer. And now we're back here and we're asking the same questions. I always thought, like, why did God bring us back? Is there something, what does he need from us? Like, God, we're ready to serve you. Just give us, like, so we're saying these prayers, and I know he's going to start to answer them in his time. So I think if everyone could just kind of be honest and genuine and praying for this opportunity to love others, serve others, gift others, and our abundance should serve those who are lacking in so many different things, and their abundance will do back. And just be willing to pray for it, ask for it, and I'll do that, and I hope everyone on the call can do that.
Dahlia, what do you think?
You know, I just keep thinking about this quote that I read. It struck me when you guys were talking. Saint Basil the Great said that, like, giving and giving to those in need is that I make the suffering of every helpless person my own. Or, you know, so I just keep thinking about that, because I'm like, if I feel that really every helpless person who's suffering in different ways is my own, like it's like I'm carrying it, you know, and I know that makes you feel heavy, and I don't want us to feel guilty or heavy, but there is a responsibility there. And you guys are all saying it too. It was a command by Christ himself. And it was the way our early church lived, and the Acts. And, this is all, it's just a continuation of this life with God.
Yeah.
And I just can't help but to think that I have to continue doing this out of love, obviously, because when I see someone who is struggling and who's suffering, out of love, like just, or out of love, I should have a response. And how that looks, of course, like you guys are all saying, let's keep praying. Let's put that in prayers and put it before God, and he will answer each one of us when we're truly desiring it authentically, genuinely, how I can help every helpless person who's suffering. So hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, everybody said some amazing stuff tonight. I don't think there's anything to add. Thank you guys again so much for being with us this evening, for challenging us, for living that which you preach through just your example to the church as a whole. We have so much respect for the two of you, and so much to learn from the two of you. And I hope that those who tuned in tonight to this podcast could really take the words that we shared tonight and not just let it be, oh, that was a really nice, cool, interesting conversation, but something that actually hits the heart. We're not called to end world hunger. We're called to just feed the hungry. That's our role in the world. So with that said, may you all have a wonderful evening. May God bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you. Be gracious to you. And I pray, if you like this podcast, if you have enjoyed it, share it with a friend. Subscribe on YouTube. Give us a review on iTunes. It really goes a long way for what this conversations like this to bless others. You can ask Alexa to play the reintroduction podcast, and she does. It's pretty cool. But
Chris,
thank you. Yeah.
You're taking too long with the outro. I have some mason jars that I need to go fill.
Killing me, man. Killing me. Anyway, have a wonderful evening. Good night, guys. Love you. Take care.
Thank you guys so much.